We're in the middle of watching a New Age movement, and some people pay attention to it and some people don't. But we are watching, and for the last 20 years, we have been watching progressively these Atlantean masters from the Wysitek Matrix and some of the competing ones from the Phantom Matrix that are fighting with them but are still, trying to get the planet and its people in the Phantom Matrix. We have been watching them go to sacred sites with these wonderful rituals they do. They do rattles and they do all sorts of ancient sacred ceremonies like we do, but they're different than the ones we do, because what they've been doing for the last 20 years is putting either the Metatronic codes or the Phantom Matrix reverse codes into the planetary grids at the sacred sites that they knew were sacred because they were sacred since Atlantis. Now, we're in the end leg of the journey that really began in Atlantis. We are at the point where certain events are going to begin to be more and more obvious to us. At the end of this workshop, Ma'a is going to explain more about what that might look like. And before we do that, we're going to go through a bit more of what has taken place, how we got where we are, because there is still a beloved but dangerous level of innocence, even among the people who consider themselves interested in the Azurite work. The magnitude of what we're involved in still hasn't sunk in for a lot of people. This isn't a couple of negative groups got involved and did some things with our holy books. This has been across the board since Atlantis. Every bit of spiritual teachings have been tampered with, have been taken and used as control dogmas to mind control us to get us to this point in history. There are still people among us that like to look into other things and say, oh, maybe I'll try this meditation from that group. Maybe these are a good group. It's very sad to recognize, but it's important if you want to be able to hold your integrity in this period, that at this point in time, all of the texts have a little bit of sacred left, because originally they were all part of the 12 sets of teachings that were from the Emerald Covenant, that were the CDD plate teachings that were given to the 12 tribes. All of the holy teachings on this planet were originally from the CDD plates, and they were translations, and each one, there were 12 different languages that they were done in. Each one of the tribes was a guardian of one of those sacred teachings. Pieces of each of those have been taken and muddled up with a bunch of other nonsense to get us to use sound tones, to get us to use prayers, which are commands in sound, and scale our wave, to get us to begin to give our power away, to externalize God's. And it will help us a lot right now. I mean, we have no attachment. The Iani, the founders races, we don't have an attachment to whether or not you choose to follow the teachings that we bring through. We will bring these teachings through whether 1 million people listen or whether nobody listens, because it's the fulfillment of a promise that we would bring back the original planetary memory banks. That's what speakers do. The three of us have been speakers before. I have been, as has Ben, and so has Mac. We have been speakers before, and sometimes being a speaker has nothing to do with writing books and has nothing to do with even speaking to another human being. A speaker is a being who runs the frequency into the planetary grids through the DNA and puts the original cellular memory back into the planet that was here to begin with, runs the divine blueprint. Now, in this time frame, it's a little easier than it has been in others. We actually have almost enough time to write books, almost enough time to get it translated into a written form. There were times when it was not allowed in a written form because it would immediately fall into the hands of the Leviathan forces and the fallen ETs that guided them, fallen angelics, and they would take the knowledge and abuse it in ways to advance their own cause. At this point in time, the reason we're allowed to put it in writing, to speak it to anybody and everybody, is because it's too late to worry about that. They've already got it. They've been able to accrue pieces of the sacred teachings of grid mechanics, the Templar quest things, the sacred sciences. They know enough of it by now that even if they get some of the things that are coming in on security clearance now, it's not going to make a difference in the outcome. So it's kind of like you get to a certain point where, well, ideally things go a certain way and you don't have to reveal all of this material. You keep it under protection for, so it doesn't get further abused. But if you get to a certain point where it's going to turn into a mess anyway, then you just give the teachings wherever, whenever, because whoever can grasp as much of them as possible will be the people who might be left standing. And I'm not into fear-based stuff. And I told the Guardians a while back, this is part of my growing up, that if you ever get into talking about pole shift and that kind of stuff, I quit. I'm not going to be a doom and gloom person. I'm not into that stuff, because you have a lot of channels out there, doing all that kind of thing. And they said, well, we're about the, furthest away from doom and gloom as you can get. We'll show you what's taking place and what needs to be done to prevent doom and gloom.